Ali Abdaal says this. It's like get going, then get good. He's like just make a ton of content, then get really smart about it. Welcome back to the Smart Nonsense Podcast, where we talk about entrepreneurship, self-development, challenging norms. Pop, we're shaking up. We're shaking things up. Shaking the format up. You got a new hat.
It's a shook shaking margarita on the rocks. I'm at the beach. I saw my old beach club that I used to work at. Had a little PTSD. I did like a long walk because I'm a morning walk guy now that I have an established home for 2 weeks.
Outside or inside?
Outside on the beach, a couple miles,
Outside
and I
walk.
walked home. It was kind of sad. Actually, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I like living in a nice beach town in like the spring, winter, because all the rich people from New York, they're not living in their homes. So I'm just trespassing as fuck, going around looking in these nice places. I'm like, oh, that's a really nice chandelier you got there. I'm walking through their yard. I'm like, oh, that tree looks really good to climb. And it's like, ain't nobody there. So what's going to happen? And I was thinking about it too. I'm like, say some person came out. I guess I could just be like, hey, I really like your house. I wanted to see it up close. But then they're like, aren't you almost 25? And I'm like, yeah.
Fuck.
So yeah, I went for a walk and I got reminded of what that job was like.
I entered the nuclear reactor. I just wanted to see it up close. That's what you tell the Department of Homeland Security.
And
I'm gonna use that.
Hey, I wanted to connect it to something that I was going to tease that we're going to talk about today, but I don't want to make that connection because it's too deep in the tease. I want to talk about how I got to that tease before we get into it. But Belky, I've been on a tear. I'm back in it. I don't know if you saw, but clip fucks, and I'm ready to.
Go watch this on YouTube. We got new hats. Mine says.
Oh, you see that guy
creator,
on TikTok
but...
that does the guy that's
he's
like,
got a lot of hair, right?
attractive
So
black dude.
he's like
I don't know how he does
to
it
get
doing
his
that.
to get his hair in the hat, right?
Yeah.
But
Some cool shit.
yours says clipped fucks because it does. You know what else fucks pop? This format.
Because it does.
fuck.
Dude, that was a Crystalia's Hey, put the hat back on though.
Dude, I need a microphone holder so I can turn away like Chris does from the microphone and just
I'm back.
do you want to tell people about the new format? What to expect here? New year, new pod?
Yeah, new pod, 15 minutes late, so that's off to a good start. But I got nervous because this is the resurrection right after Easter. I'm coming back, and I'm ready to live it. You know what? I was listening. I've been pretty much on the road for the last 36 hours, and I'm finally settled in. But in Ecuador, I was listening
36 hours. 3 years.
It don't stop. I was listening to Colin and Samir. They were talking to the Yes Theory guys. And actually, this is gonna like a talking of a hearsay. But the Yes Theory guys were talking about this, like the business of YouTube.
If you say yes to everything, you're actually not saying yes to anything.
Death was a real possibility.
Positivity by itself will not sell.
That kind of fucked me up.
Like as you grow, if you want to reach the next level, you have to create a team around you. And people don't necessarily want that. So they were talking about this guy, I forget his name, I'll put it the B-roll on YouTube, but he's growing like crazy.
Oh my God!
I hired this team and he was like, what the fuck? I don't like doing this. Now it's a business. I just wanted to be a creator. He fired everybody and then just became like his own personal vlog guy again. And now he's more popular than ever. And he's got, I don't know, he's like the next Mr. Beast. I think that's the title of the Colin and Samir for him. Probably find it.
Wait, so Colin and Samir are saying to hit the next level of YouTube, you need to bring on a team to create systems around yourself. But this guy didn't, and he proved them wrong.
It's Ryan Trahan. I don't know. He does like Mr. Beast type challenges. But no, I think that's the natural evolution of anything that's growing. It's like to grow, you usually need to hire more people, but then you get in the business of managing. And it's like, I just want to be a creator, not a manager. So what the fuck am I doing? And he just reset everything. But he kind of proved them wrong in that he's doing better than ever. So you just need that epicenter. And oh God, the amount of transitions I could make into it. I'm so
the format. Okay, because I'm revamping the vlog. I think we're at the point where it's like Ali Abdaal says this. It's like get going, then get good. He's like just make a ton of content, then get really smart about it. And you've been telling me for months and months and months, get smart about it. And I'm like, it's hard. There's a lot of friction. Like, let me just keep going. Now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, let's get smart. So that's where we're testing this idea of like new content buckets, better format, better systems. So we know what to make, and the viewer knows what they're actually here for.
Hey, actually here for a billion of the week. That's what I'm going to do for those MFM listener types. We got a billionaire. Probably the most underrated, unknown investor of all time, at least for me, who's actually better than what Warren Buffett. So that surprised the fuck out of me. I want to tell his story. But, yeah, I think, like, listening to Mr. Beast, and he's like, yo, don't do just the quantity game, at least not on YouTube. On YouTube, do like put some thought into it because we know the content's there. Slick Rick texted you. He's like, you guys have a great business. I want to like see your thought process behind all the decisions that are going on and like get that. And the podcast is kind of rambly, clearly. Just give me like the concise 5-minute version of that. It's like, all right, that's probably what it should be.
It's not even, I don't think it's the rambles that's the issue. It's this fine line of doing this for ourselves, but then also trying to create something larger that is for the viewer, for an audience. Like, it's just inside jokes and like intercompany stuff that's so deep. And that's why we do this. This was a phone call between you and I. But at some point we gotta give smarts and value.
The transitions I could make right
Why are you
now.
moaning?
God damn it. Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap on that, we're gonna try this, a different like content bucket each day of the week. Gen Z masterclass, things we wish we knew in high school and college, book club, pod club, YouTube club, video, whatever we're jamming on. That's gonna happen today.
It's really,
we
we're
got,
testing
Pop?
this opt-out model where we just have the schedule. You come to expect it. We rip. Occasionally, I'll get derailed by something that I like, and I just dive down the rabbit hole, and I'm like, oh, I like this icon guy. He's pretty fucking sick. Let me dive into it. And now I'm just scurrying around 3 feet below the surface, and I'm coming back up to let y'all babies know that my shadow's there. Because now I'm a groundhog, not a rabbit. That's how I evolve.
Right, so this is how we get into the inside jokes. Today was day one of the new format. I'm like, let's build a system so that we can get all that stuff out of our brain. It's just on paper we know to show up. And you're like, nope, veto, day one. I want a different format.
You know why?
We're doing I Can. Let's
Here's
go,
what
baby.
happened. I like your transitions. All right, where's the? Let me trace the lineage. What was that? Ancestry.com. We're gonna do Ancestry.com on how I got to this level. And goddamn, I love Sean Puri. By the way, I listened to him this morning. I'm just like, the way he thinks about things and approaches stuff. I really want to somehow learn his skills of just like the way he thinks about asking questions and like telling stories with analogy. I'm like, oh, it's fucking brilliant. But okay, so let's trace this lineage. Basically, Elon Musk, like a week or so, it's kind of died off, but really big news. He came in, he just big dick Twitter. He's like, yo guys, I just bought like 9% of your shares. Give me a board seat. I'm like, all right, here's your board seat. He's like, JK, I don't want the board seat. I want it all. Then he offers like, what is it? $54.20 a share because he's a child and loves weed, for the entire company. And why? Because he's like, yo, Twitter, you guys are just fucking dropping the ball. It's supposed to be this, the town square, which is like freedom of speech. You guys represent modern freedom of speech, but you're doing a shitty job because you're blocking all these accounts. So you're censoring everybody. And plus your stock price just sucks. Like for the last 10 years, you've basically done nothing, whereas every other tech stock has gone to the moon. So it's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? I think someone said, maybe it was Zuckerberg. I don't know. I'm going to misquote, but it's like, fuck, what was it? It's such a good quote. It's like, you're in a gold mine, but you're just like picking your nose, like something like that. That's the Twitter execs. Like they don't know what they're doing. They're just like, the gold's right there, but they're just like, So Musk comes in and tries to do this, and this like poison pill. And basically the All In podcast is like, we got to debrief this for the entire world to like break down what's happening. And in that, what Elon Musk is trying to do is something that this one guy pioneered like 40 years ago. And I knew nothing about this guy until Friedberg, who's I'm don't know, like spirit animal isn't the right word, but he's like the fucking like the wise man of the podcast. The rest are like smart, but they don't really like take both sides too well usually. But he's like the most balanced person that you would just look up to. So he says, the problem,
I feel like he's the only one with no ego.
right, because he doesn't seek the spotlight. I think the others do, and that they want like Sachs jumped on these clips from the start. Friedberg was like, I don't like the clips because I think they misrepresent the longer message there. And it's like, okay, we don't agree, but that's a great principle. And we were saying fuck Friedberg and stuff just because we're children, and that's like our business depends on the opposite of what Friedberg says. But I agree with him because now you see Sachs and he gets really fucking hyped up, but it's probably just for the clips that are going on TikTok or Twitter. So Friedberg says, he's like, the main problem with Twitter, which you can see in the stats, and there are a bunch of tweets, we'll just throw them up on YouTube, but it's like the board of Twitter, except for Jack Dorsey, who was the founder, owns almost none of Twitter. So in terms of like skin in the game,
And Jack Dorsey owns
2%.
2%,
Right.
like maximum.
Right. And I think because he like gave some away and stuff like that, but I don't know, that's just how you get diluted. So almost none of the board has skin in the game, has any vested interest in the success of Twitter. They're just there to collect their, I don't know, like $250,000 check, doing nothing and just like hanging out, pretty much doing a shit job. And so Friedberg says, he's like, I think this quote came from this guy, Carl Icahn, but I agree with it.
The board should be represented by the biggest shareholders.
I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That seems like intuitively makes sense because like the board, so basically the board is supposed to represent the shareholders. And any company, the shareholders, you don't really have a voice because there are a fucking million of them. So you get this board of like, I don't know, 5, 10 people, whatever it is, to represent them. And they're kind of the check and balance with the CEO. So Belky, you're running Clipped. If we had a board of like Dharmesh, Chamath, David Sachs, they would be like, Belky, you're doing a shit job running this thing. And I don't know what Dylan does anymore. So like, you guys got to get it together. That's what keeps us in check. But the problem is, why do you need that? Well, you need that because the CEO often doesn't have the most skin in the game either. Like they get these big ass compensation packages, often these things about golden parachutes where they, even if they do a shitty job, they still get paid a lot of money. And they end up being, I don't know if you heard the Malcolm Gladwell on, it was probably a while ago, on golf and golf courses, how they get all these tax rebates. But basically all these CEOs are just golf addicts. Like you see our friend Brian, his dad's the CEO of a large public company, not a large, a public company. And all they do is play golf all the time. So basically this guy, Carl Icahn, now gets on my radar from Friedberg. And I'm like, that makes sense. That's intuitively cool. Who the fuck is this guy? So I go to Google him and I'm like, Carl Icahn. Oh, he has this HBO documentary. It's called Icahn, The Restless Billionaire. I'm like, The Restless Billionaire.
ICAHN.
My mom's like, it should be Icahn. It's like, yeah, but Icon's also dope because he's like an icon. Who's that Jaden Smith song? Yeah, Carl
That's
Icahn.
his real name, yeah?
And so now I'm like, okay, this is cool. I don't have anything to watch. I'll just watch it on my plane ride home. And so I start getting into this. And this is the fucking crazy thing about it is I've just never heard of this guy. But like once you're in the finance world, it's like, oh my God, this is like the Darth Vader of the finance world. And we've just never heard about him. And I'm sure there are other like George Soros types that are like also freaky, but he's what you'd call the original corporate raider. And what the fuck is a corporate raider? He's like the OG guy. He's
scared,
a fucking
Bob.
gnarly dude. And that's why I was texting him. Like, oh my God, this guy's badass. Like he's from Queens and he's kind of like Trump is also from Queens and probably Jason Calacanis. I think all these people that are from like the Queens area, they all have very similar personality types in that they're pretty ruthless, short-term minded, but like speak their minds type people. And I don't know if that's just the environment there. It's like you're not really playing long-term games. You're just like, he's trying to fuck me, so I'm going to fuck him first, and I'm going to make a lot of money doing it. That's sort of the vibe. And this guy has just built the largest career off that.
It might be like it might be immigration out there or like old mafia ties, mobster stuff. It's just like tit for tat.
What's cool about him, why I liked him,
I don't
and
know.
why I watched it twice yesterday. Actually, I watched it first on the plane, and the second I got back with my mom in one day.
Twice.
And what I like, Belky's out here running the business. I'm just watching this twice.
That's what you got to tell the board you do. You watch the same movie twice in one day. I've never done that in my life.
It's a 2-hour
That's the
documentary.
difference between us.
Yeah. Well, here's the first
For a
no,
20-minute
dude, not
podcast.
20 minutes. That's not how it goes. Well, that's the thing. Once I get in the rabbit hole, I text you. I'm like, oh, it's toast. I'm going to learn everything I can about this guy. I was actually pissed because I'm like, I kind of want to push this podcast back so I can read his book because he's got like one of those Walter Isaacson type biography. It's not Walter Isaacson. Actually, this guy, what's interesting, this guy was from the same town, Bedford, New York, as Carl Icahn. And they kind of befriended each other. And he's like, dude, I want to write a book about your life. And he's like, get the fuck out. You're not writing a book about me. And he's like, you joking? Like, I'm going to write a book. Like, I'm an author. I want to write this. You have this crazy story that no one's told. He's like, if you try and write this book, I'm going to make sure you cannot sleep because I'm going to sue the fuck out of you. You're going to be like, your family's not going to be able to do shit. You're just going to be like eating bread out of the streets.
I said to Carl one day, I'm going to write a book about you. And he said, well, you're just not going to do that, Mark. I'm going to sue your butt off. You won't have a house. You won't have a business. Your kids will be in the street. There'll be nothing to eat. I'm telling you, I'm going to put 50 lawyers against you.
He's like, what, dude? We're friends. He's like, don't write this fucking book. And it's like the craziest thing. And I'll like cut to the, I don't know, fucking, this is kind of like the end of the story. But the fascinating part about this guy is he's just concerned with, like, he likes the game. It's not like he doesn't give a shit really about the money. The money is just like the chips that you make. Like, it's like you don't care about the chips in a poker game. It's just like that's how you represent winning by having a lot of them. He's like, I just like fucking winning. It's not even like winning that much. It's kind of like a blue ball. Like, you think you want to win and then you win and you're like, oh, that's not that cool. But he's just an addict to winning. And that's just the biggest stage he could do it is in the finance world. And he, early on in his life, like the way he paid his way, actually, this is kind of cool, with school. He was like kind of smart. I think he did the best in the Bronx, did I say the Bronx? The Queens. In, I don't know, whatever the test is to get in, like board exams or whatever it is. I don't know, whatever, SATs. And he does the best. And his dad's like, oh, if you get into Harvard, Princeton, or Yale, I'll pay for your tuition. She's like, okay. And then he gets into all three of them. And then when he gets in, his dad's like, yeah, I said tuition, but I'm not going to pay for room and board. And room and board is just as expensive as tuition back then. He's like, okay, fuck. He gets a job at this beach club, which what kind of reminded me of this walk this morning. And he made $100 that week. And a bunch of like local traders that were around like a couple of years older than him, like, yo, Icon, come play poker with us. They wipe his ass out. Then the next week he goes and he reads 3 books, comes back and wipes them out. And then he continues wiping them out for the rest of the summer. And then he pays for his Princeton tuition. So badass fucking dude. But all of this, like, he amasses all of this money throughout his life by like thinking moves and moves ahead of everyone else. Like, he's also addicted to chess. And they're like, oh, most people think like the present. Some people that are smart, like CEOs, will think like maybe 3 moves ahead. Icon, he thinks 11 moves ahead. Like, there is no game theory world that you have envisioned that he already hasn't and won that world. So he's just this fucking ruthless guy. But the crazy part about the book is like he doesn't give a shit about legacy. Like, they're like, what is his legacy? He has none. He hasn't done shit with his money. Like most people that are billionaires, I guess he did the giving pledge because Bill Gates is like talking about him in this documentary too. But he hasn't given any of his money away. And they're like, yo, dude, like, you're gonna have to give this shit away, you know? You're like, you signed the pledge and stuff. And he's like, yeah, but here's the thing. To take over the world, you need an army. And my money is my army. It's like, whoa, what the fuck, dude? He's fucking raw. So I'm like, all right. I don't know, dude. He's just badass. And from the start, he's just like...
Dude, he must have a legacy.
I don't think he's dead.
He's still alive, right?
He was born in 36. He's 86 right now, worth almost 20 billion. And so, yeah, the craziest part to me was like this guy that's been invisible. Actually, what's his name? Who's the guy that does the public speaking? That's fucking Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is like he has his money book, and he interviewed or tried to interview Icon, and he's like, yeah, what people don't realize is like Warren Buffett over like take from like 1986 to like 2011 or whatever when he wrote his book. It's like, yeah, Buffett in this time he had a 20% return, which is like compound year over year, which is crazy. That's why he's a mega billionaire. But then people sleep on this guy, Icon. He's at a 30% year over year return for that exact same time period. But no one knows who the fuck he is. It's like,
How is he at a? He's younger than Buffett.
It also depends on
How's
how
he at
much
a 30% return
principles.
hasn't made as much as Buffett. Yeah, right.
Basically,
Right.
badass dude. Okay, so the crazy part, like, how does he work? What is his strategy? Because like I think that's fascinating. I didn't really know what a corporate raider was, and now I'm like, okay, Musk is kind of doing something like that, and he also did this thing that has to do with GameStop. So I'll talk about.
Raid like RAID.
Like his mom
Like-
literally
like
called him
he's going to
Genghis
raid a
Khan when he was a
corporation?
kid. He's like, you're Genghis Khan. Because he'd just go and raid a company and just like behead the leader and take it over and just take all the spoils. And it's like, holy fuck. And what's kind of funny is at the start of this documentary, they're like, yo, dude, or he's saying, he's like, yeah, in the past they used to call me a corporate raider, and now they call me an activist because I come in, and it sounds nicer. It's a, what do you call that, euphemism? It's like, oh, I come in and I'm active as an investor. Like I want to instate change in the company because I think it's being run poorly. But I haven't changed shit. Like call me a raider, call me an activist. I'm just there to change shit up and make money. And he's got this thing like, he's got a pillow that they flash to in the documentary a bunch of times. It's like nothing beats free cash flow, or like not free cash, or like profit. It's like profits or like cash flow. It's like cash flow is king. And so that's, so what does that actually mean?
assets.
So basically, how it works is basically what Elon Musk is doing. So you'll come in, and how it typically works is he'll buy like 3-4%. And below 5%, you don't have to report anything. After that, it's like this 13D, and it's some form that you have to fill out and be like, yo, I bought this shit. And Elon Musk did it when he bought his 9%. It's like, tell the world, okay, I bought this. But under 5, you don't have to tell anybody. So you can kind of like invisibly buy this up. So he would do that. Then he would tell the CEO of the company and the board, he's like, hey, I now own 3% of this company, whatever it is. You have a shit ton of cash on hand. Give that to the shareholders. You're not doing a good job with it. And okay, I should preface this. Like, how does he get that? So I'll say really quick. He gets that because he's just waiting. He's waiting to pounce. Like this is the problem with public companies and why they always want to keep their share price up. Because the second it drops, like some event happens. Say like Peloton shit dropped, or like recently all these stocks dropped, and this is what Musk should do, is the price goes really low. So now you can buy a fuckload of it and come in and raid the company when they're at their like weakest, most vulnerable point. So that's what he'd do. He'd buy up 3% and be like, okay, you're on like you have a good company. You're just running it like shit. Like look at the stock price right now, but you have like a ton of cash. That's what he'd look for. And they'd be trying to like buy other companies, mergers and acquisitions. He's like, no, fuck that. Give that back to the shareholders. Like buy your shares back so that all our prices go up. And then he'd just try and sell it after that and make a lot of money. So he would come in, and usually like the first story is, I guess he'd come in, and usually when he's like, yo, give me this money. And like, dude, do you own like 3%? Fuck you. And he's like, okay. And then he buys like 7% more. So now he's got 10%. He's like, how about now? You're going to fucking listen to me? Like all, and now like he has to report this. So now like people are paying attention. Now he goes to all the other shareholders, and they're like, yo, dude, he's pretty badass, influential guy. So he's like, look at how they're running this company like shit. They're not in your best interest because they're just playing golf all day. He has this thing that's like survival of the unfittest, where you ever hear like you hire or you like rise up to your level of incompetence. Like basically like bad people get in and they're just hanging out like they're all day. They're all day, so they just keep getting promoted, but they're really just shitty people, but they've been around for a while and they like get along with everyone, so they get promoted to CEO. He's like, most companies, almost every company is run like shit. So I'm just waiting for that moment to pounce and like run it properly. So that's what he did. And the first story was kind of cool. It was what was it called? It was like Tappan. Tappan knows some like microwaves and like kitchen shit company that you'd see in like The Price is Right and stuff. And so he came in, bought this, and the CEO was like super hard-headed, and he's like, yo, I saw that you bought all this and now you have a board seat and you're trying to like mess with my board, but don't get in the way. I'm trying to buy this company. Don't get in the way. I'm going to improve the company. And then Icon's like, all right, dude, whatever. This is at a dinner before the next board meeting. It's like, whatever. It's like, today I'd tell him, fuck you, but whatever. He just keeps his mouth shut. Then he gets to the board meeting. And this guy, he's like trying to command everyone. He's like, these are the numbers. We prepared this like 50-page stack and read through it, but it all makes sense. Just trust me. This is going to work well. I'm like, the board's like, okay, like we've had a down round this month, the stock, but if we buy this company, it'll work back. And Icon's like, basically, no, I'm not doing this. And they're like, who the fuck is this guy? He's like 30-something years old or whatever. I guess he was probably old at this point, 50. Basically a no-name at this time, but he bought some of the company. He's like, no, this is the worst deal I've ever seen. This guy has no idea what the fuck he's doing. Get him out of here. And now this guy's red blood. He's like, I don't know if red blood is the thing, but he's like, who the fuck is this guy? Or don't listen to him. He's like, no, look at the numbers. And he's going to this other guy on the board like, does this number make sense to you? Like, explain this company and how this makes sense. And like, he just keeps investigating. He's like, you have 50 pages, but none of this at all makes, like, simply explain how this makes sense for the shareholder. And he's like, I don't know. And basically Icon comes in and just fucking trashes this dude, and then they out the CEO, bring in the new guy, and now the share price goes up because they get bought in like another 6 months. And he just rinse and repeats this for every single company he goes into. And it's like crazy. Like, he even did this more recently in like, I don't know, 2015 with Apple. Like, he got Tim Cook to come and have dinner with him because he bought enough of the company. He's like, yo, Tim Cook, you have like 200 billion in cash. What the fuck are you doing? Buy some of the stock back. And Tim Cook's like, yeah, I kind of want to, but the board won't let me. And he's like, no, I'm on your side now. We're going to fucking get you to buy these back because that's what's best, because you don't know what to do with all this money. And I'm like, okay. And then Apple goes ahead and buys all these stocks back. He makes a boatload of money, sells it out, makes like $3 billion off of it. It's like, this is just Icon.
Dude, what are Icon? What are his incentives? It's just chips in the game.
His incentive is he buys part of the company.
He just wants Tim Cook to win.
I want the stock price to go up so I can make a boatload of money. And then like he's technically, because he's just one of these common shareholders, he's technically representing the shareholders better than the board is, because now he's the largest shareholder. So he's like what the board should actually be. Right. So that's why the shareholders really actually realize he comes in and like, oh wait, even though he's a fucking dick and this raider, he technically has our best interest in mind because he wants the share price to go up, at least in like this short or medium term. It's like, that's probably good. We should probably listen to him. And then he ends up just taking over the company because he's thought through all this stuff. And these CEOs he says they're like all a bunch of dummies. Like every CEO pretty much out there is fucking shit. All these companies, he's like, I would be hard pressed to find a company where I can immediately fire 30% of the company. It wouldn't function better. It's like, hey, you trying to come join Epicenter now?
Yeah. So that's why. So yeah, that's right. Two things. This guy is like Mr. Epicenter,
David.
which comes from Jason Fried, David Hannemeyer Hansen, Daniel, David, DHH. Epicenter, just like, what's the core of this thing that if it's just that core, will still exist, will still be operating. So he's OG that. I bet you the rework guys have taken this from him. I also bet you Elon, being a first principles thinker, there's no doubt in my mind he's just running Icon's playbook on Twitter.
Well, that's the thing.
And he's probably watched this documentary.
They all knows
about all
like,
these things.
Obviously, Friedberg knew about Icon. No one there questioned it because it was just like, once you know, and you like, you see it, you see the playbook, what's going on. Because like in investing, I don't know how many different approaches, but like I think of Warren Buffett. Okay, he's value investing, right? You buy just a good company that you think is great and you stay in there for the long term, like a Coke or an Apple even, and you hang out. That's one strategy. And it's like George Soros, and he's like, oh, let me look at the macro environment. And when it's like, I think I can buy, I don't know what he bought, like fucking, what do you use in England? I don't know, some other currency. Like he would just be like a day trader on currency. Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm going to buy the pound because the price is going to go up tomorrow, and he makes a boatload of money. Like there's that type of investing. And there's like to the Michael Burry from The Big Short. It's like, oh, you notice a big problem, a problematic company or companies. I'm going to short them, as in like expect that the stock price is going to drop and then make a lot of money off that. But then there's like this, which is this active corporate rating where you come in and totally replace it. And it's kind of like private equity to me. And it reminds me of like that Huss and Rant where they come in and they fucking tear up a company. I'm doing a bad job telling these stories, but like another fucking cool one is
mergers and acquisitions.
TWA, Trans World Airline, I guess. I don't know what it stands for actually. But he buys that in like 88.
The airline.
And he comes in and the problem with TWA was like the first time the stock price dropped in a while, but these unions were fucking it. Like they had the pilots union, they had the like airline attendant union, mechanics union, all these unions had these high prices, so he had to come in and renegotiate. And so he found his way in, and for the first time he was going to be like more active as a manager. He could be like an actual hands-on chairman versus normally he just replaces the CEO and lets it rip. But here, or like tells him what the fuck to do, just big dicks him. But here he gets in there and he's like, all right, I'm going to come renegotiate all of these terms so we can just turn this company around quickly with the unions. So he comes in, he gets like, he gets the mechanics union pretty easily. Then he comes to the pilots union. And the pilots are like all these World War II ex-pilots that have just been around and like everyone reveres them as heroes. And he's like, all right. He comes in, it's the union, so they're all there, and they're just like super angry coming in because he's basically going to tell them, I'm cutting your wages. So he's like cutting the wages of the heroes of our country that saved us. He comes in, and the first thing he does, and they said that it was 10 minutes. I don't know if it was 10, but it at least felt like 10 minutes, where he gets on stage and he just stares. Just looking at them all, like literally nothing for 10 minutes. He's just looking at them. And then he reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out an egg. He's like, this egg. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Because he's kind of like, you don't know what he looks like, I guess, but he's like kind of disheveled looking, like, I don't know, just kind of like, I don't know, fucking like, they thought he could trample over this, they could trample over this guy because he's like, who the fuck is he? Now he pulls an egg out of his pocket and he looks at them all on stage. And he's like, all of you here are this egg. And I am the 5 fingers around this egg. Now, what you can do right now is accept the terms for lower wages, or I will crush you. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? He's just like, I will crush the most badass heroes. And they're like, oh my God. And they're like, all right, this guy's fucking serious. And then they start getting into his story and like, oh my God, he's done this for every single other company. So he means business. And they submit, and then he gets like the flight attendants. They were having issues. They're like, "Fuck this guy!" And they even show up at his house in Bedford, and he shows up with his children. He's like, "Yo, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, why are you here? I'm in your best interest. Like, this other person representing you isn't." And he's like, "You know what? They were getting really annoying. So I'm like, can we just make a fucking school and just train other flight attendants and screw all these people? I don't even care about them." And it's like, oh, that kind of reminded me of something. But then. He literally does that. He creates a school and gets a ton of applications, and then like half of them are like, oh shit, he's not actually going to submit. So they still like stay with the company, and then he fills the rest with the school. It's just like the most fucking cutthroat badass dude that just wants to win for no reason. And I got one more story. So, well, you just get addicted.
That's what I can't figure out. What he wants to win for. Or what kind of chip on his shoulder inferior complex is
you ever hear this guy
running with? It's crazy.
You maybe see him on like YouTube. He's a really good looking, like Harvard educated hedge fund guy.
No, Ackman.
He even had a YouTube thing explaining like how to read an income statement. But I don't know. Sometimes people hear from. Okay, so this guy Bill Ackman, and it has to do with kind of connects to the GameStop shit from before. So Bill Ackman, there's this company called Herbalife. Herbalife is the supplement company, I guess, or like protein powders and shit like that. But it's basically a pyramid scheme, where it's like multi-level marketing pyramid scheme. It's all kind of the same. It's like, oh, I'm going to tell Henry and Athena that they should buy this thing. and then I get some of the profits, and also the person that sold me gets some of the profits. So it's like a fringe pyramid scheme. So Bill Ackman, he comes in and he's like, okay, it's clearly a fucking blood money game that they're doing. They're taking advantage of all these like immigrants who don't know what's happening, and they're promising like, oh, you can get super rich off of working very little with this pyramid scheme / multi-level marketing. And he's bringing that to light. And in the process, he shorted the shit out of the stock. He's like, oh, what does shorting mean? It means that it's kind of complicated, but basically you're going to buy the stock at a future date, assuming it's going to be really low. So like, I don't know, you make money off like the stock price is high right now, and you're going to buy it in the future. And like I don't know, you make money off the difference or some shit like that. So the problem with that is that you're committing to buying the stock at a future date. So if the stock goes up, it can in theory go up into infinity, which is like the awesome part of the stock market. If it goes really high up, you're committing to buying that stock at whatever level it's at. So now people get really nervous if the stock price goes up. So what happens is Ackman was kind of preaching all this, but he forgot about this one mistake he made years prior. The mistake he made was he went into a deal with Carl Icahn. And in that deal, it's kind of unclear who's like in the wrong with this. Probably Icahn, because he's a pretty ruthless guy. But you also respect him after watching the documentary. He's like, oh, I would trust this guy, which is part of the problem. He gets in this deal, and like I guess they were supposed to split the profits, and like Icahn kept it all for himself. And it was also like Bill Ackman was kind of new to the hedge fund world, so he thought he could like stomp on him, kind of like Trump and contractors and shit like that. So he fucks Ackman. Ackman sues him, ends up winning like $9 million. And now Icahn's like, oh, I don't fucking lose. So he just remembers this loss in his head. And I guess the one problem is Ackman kind of publicly gloated about winning this case against this really big guy that fucked him, Icahn. And so years and years later, you have now Ackman taking this short position, and Icahn, he smells blood in the water. He's like, oh, this is a very vulnerable position. Because I don't know if you've heard about this thing, but you call it a short squeeze. So what is a short squeeze? Yeah, he's going around on this preaching tour of like, oh, they're committing crimes.
Squeeze
like,
them for
this company should
every
go to
last
zero.
drop.
You're betting that the price is going to go to zero, and you're going to make a lot of money because you can buy it cheap. And you buy like, I don't know, you basically make a lot of money. So in comes Icahn, and he's like, all right, well, guess what? I'm going to buy the fuck out of this stock so that the price can't go down. I'm going to make sure that demand is there, and I'm going to like preach the hell out of this stock that he probably didn't hear about a week before. He just saw that Ackman was shorting it. He's like, oh, that's a vulnerable position. I'm going to fucking crush this pussy who crushed me before. So he comes in, and now it's like the most famous MSNBC or I think one of those news channel. Like they have this public brawl where they both get him on the line, and they're like going at it, and he's calling him like one of those like he's like, I went to this public school and all the Jews would get beat up and they'd cry about it. He's like, that's what Ackman is right now. Like, he's a pussy. He shorted me. He's like calling him all these terms, and it's kind of funny. We'll have some B-roll.
Oh,
dude, it gets
it's CNBC.
You kind of need the context.
Billionaire
Just
brawl.
watch the documentary to see that.
Icahn
But
versus
what's kind of
Ackman.
funny though is they're
Added that
ripping
to
each
watch
other
later.
apart, and it's like very Trump-esque, like pre-Trump. It was like publicly.
And I'm telling you, he's like the crybaby in the schoolyard. You know, I went to a tough school in Queens.
Yo, I don't fucking like this guy. I wouldn't invest with him for shit. And he's like, I wouldn't invest with you for shit. Like, you're terrible. No, you're fucking worse. Like, it was just really goofy. But the funny part is they're doing like the main interview from the stock exchange. So you can hear on the stock floor all these traders that are also listening to it. They're going like, oh shit, oh, and they're like all in the background, but it's got like a 2-second delay, like our podcast. So it's just really fucking funny, and the whole world has just stopped, and it's like the biggest news story ever. But what happens now is Icahn comes, trashes him, and just like shows this big dick energy. And the main problem, which I didn't realize until like listening to the story, is this thing called permanent capital, and that was the main problem with Ackman, is he didn't have this permanent capital, which is like, oh, I have money. For example, like, why do we want to bootstrap Clipped? It's because it's our money, we control it, and we can play long-term games. Like there's no someone's a shareholder in Clipped and now they want to get their money out in a week or two or whatever it is. So what happens is Ackman, he has to take money from LPs. So these limited partners that invest in him. And so kind of like what happened in The Big Short with Michael Burry, it's like you're very vulnerable with the short. So investors are kind of nervous when you take that position. So now they see the most deadly, ruthless, badass Genghis Khan of industry in the finance world come in and you're about to wage war with him. Now they're like, hey, I know this fucking pyramid scheme shit you're probably right about that, but he has billions and billions of dollars. He's a public company, so no one's asking. Like, he can play these long-term games and basically, like, bleed the fuck out of Ackman until he just dies. It's like, hey, we don't want to play that game. And so they end up literally just having to pull their money. They're like, yo, give us our money back. We don't want this. And Ackman has to do that. So he loses $1 billion in the short because Icon just came in and publicly just pummeled him. And that's just like the way the finance world works, I guess, if that's the summary. So
That's the way the cookie crumble. Pop, if Icon comes anywhere near us, I'm out.
we can't go public.
I'm
Public
so
is-
out.
Actually,
If he starts buying
I
up
saw Nassim
3-4% of
commented
our
on this,
LLC,
and he's like,
I'm so out of there.
he's like, the thing I liked about that Icon
They'll find a way.
Ackman brawl.
Hey, you know, you should commend these people. They speak in public the way they would do it in private.
It's like most people in public, they have their like prim and proper face and they're like not gonna say what they really think. He's like, Icon just came in, he's like, nah, fuck this guy. I did a deal with him, he fucked me, I'm gonna fuck him for the rest of his life. Like, screw him. I don't like him. I don't want anything to do with him. He's just a crybaby. It's like, oh wow. Say what you really think. And it's like, fuck it. It's just raw. So I think
I also just saw an interesting tweet that was like, evil people think everyone else is evil. So think about that. It's like in Icon's head, he's just operating on.
I mean,
he's
that's the thing. You
operating
watched
on,
the documentary though,
like,
and I was like,
values
I
he
like
thinks
this guy
are-
a lot.
are
Like,
good,
I was like,
are
I
right.
fuck with this dude because he
just
he
fuck
does.
him.
He just like, this is honestly what I'm thinking. But then I learned it's like, oh no, that's just a master manipulator because he's like, sometimes he says shit because that's how he wins by like telling people one thing, but then he does the opposite in what he buys. It's like, oh, because that's how he's gonna make money just because he likes making money. You just using terms now. Oh, one more.
That's that Queen's
One
Gambit.
more thing. Oh, Queens, yeah, from Queens, New York. The guy that wrote the book. It's funny. 'cause
Queens, New York.
Talking about like we talk about Ledge a lot. It's like, yeah, I went down with him because we were like really close friends. I went down with his wife and my wife. We went to Palm Beach, and I'm just like there to shoot the shit and have a good time with the company. But Icon's there like counting who paid for breakfast and lunch and dinner and who paid for the tennis match. And it's like, dude, you're worth $1.2 billion right now. And it was like 1990 or whatever it is. And it's like I'm just an author. Like, hey, I mean, I'll pay for my shit and like I just enjoy the company. But he's like, hey, the ledge ain't square. It ain't square. We got to square that ledge. Hey, well, that's what they kind of did a little bit of.
This is where we got to go look at his childhood, and I think we got a lot of traumas to
keep
unpack
going.
there. You don't.
Oh, well, weird relationship with his mom and his dad. He's an only child too. So all the pressure was on him.
I know I'm lagging,
Basically,
go.
his mom was a perfectionist, so she expected perfection out of him. And the dad was also like, your mom, she's an amazing teacher and phenomenal at like whatever it is she does. And like, I'm a phenomenal singer. And it's like, son, you have no talents. It's like, go be a doctor. You don't know what you're doing. And he's like, oh, fucking hell. And then his mom, like they were all telling him to go to med school because like Jews get fucked in the world. And it's like, just go to med school and you're going to be good. And he goes to this one, I forget what the disease is called. It's like, what are those people that they put on an island? No. I don't know. I forget. It's like TB or something. It was like a TB ward. I forget what it
Slaughter.
was. But he goes in there and he's, because he got into med school.
What? Pygmies?
TB, tuberculosis?
I got kicked, Pop. I got kicked. Now I'm on the worst Wi-Fi.
No, well, hey, nothing to really wrap up. Basically, his mom wanted him to go to med school. He went to med school, went to this TB ward, and they're like, "Hey, can you give us a backup diagnosis?" He's like, "Why? I'm pretty sure they got TB," and pointed to the sign that said like TB ward, and they're like, "No fucking jokes. Like, get in there and see what's happening." So he gets in there, and one of these patients coughs on him. He's like, "Fuck this. I'm out. I quit." I'm like, "What do you mean? You quit? You can't come back?" He's like, "Perfect. And you be the one that tells my mom all that shit." And then he just takes off and he walks like 10 blocks up and enlists in the army. It's like, I went to the army, but I don't really like authority, so I fucking hated it. I just played poker and won like 25 grand and then left. And then I went and joined the finance world. Like, this guy's just fucking crazy. But when he went to the finance world, I think this is what I want to connect it with. He was making a good amount of money, but his dad never asked him like at all what he does. Like, his dad just didn't take interest in him or didn't care about him enough to like ask what he actually does. Never once. Until like, I don't know, 10 years later, he got out a notepad in Florida and he's like, "Hey, can you like sketch out what you actually do to make money?" And he did it. And then they like hugged or something and he cried because it was the first time his dad ever cared. And I'm like, And then you hear Sam Parr in today's
I'm getting the trauma.
My First Million. He's like, "Hey, if you don't have any daddy problems, then you're not going to build a $1 billion empire." It's like, well, that's another example of why ain't daddy problems.
You gotta have a daddy do.
And we don't have
Pop,
daddy problems.
We don't have daddy problems. We got Daddy Darmesh. And there's an inside joke to cap it off, baby. Hey, I'll see you later. I had one more thing, but it apparently doesn't matter.
Can I give you a takeaway from spending the last 24 hours?
Yeah.
I think this is the takeaway. Takeaway is you can easily get addicted to the game. I think that's why we have a lot of fun. Like, it's fun. Like, I think it's good. But try and get addicted to the game while playing long term. And I struggle a lot with long term. That's, you're getting kind of ripped apart by your girlfriend for not making friends while you're traveling. But it's like, oh, that's just short term games. Like, that's just kind of in it for yourself because you're not really going to live with any of those people for longer than 6 months. So, not a very long-term relationship. I've made some mistakes recently where I'm like, capitalizing on
instant gratification.
I'm an instant gratification monkey, dude. Oh,
Most
there's
of us
the
are.
inside wait but why joke. So just play long-term games, and I think that makes the games okay, because you can win that at those games, but you want other people to win too, so it's more productive. Versus
right. So this
short-term.
This guy doesn't have a legacy. He probably doesn't have many people that he's close to. His army is his money. It's like, I don't know. When he's on his deathbed, who's going to show up at the funeral, right?
Me. Like, that dude fucking ripped.
And with that, we go to Lou, baby. See ya. Go to Lou!